Hello again. So we've talked about three different parts of a model that Mankiw has put together in our textbook. And so now I'm going to go ahead, since we've talked about each of the three parts, I'm going to go ahead and put them together. And what I'm talking about, if you look in the book, looks something like this. I've done some additional writing here because I wanted to clarify something that I hope I didn't create confusion in the last piece, and hopefully it created clarity. I think it did. Of course, that's my intention. In this model that we just discussed, when we looked at the exchange rate, I left it as euros per dollar to help clarify what the term exchange rate meant on the left-hand side or on the vertical axis. Now, I want to be clear, that's the real exchange rate, which is the rate at which goods can trade across these countries' borders. When I say euros per dollar, that implies the nominal rate. But I find it helpful for you to recognize that it's European goods per US good in real terms. So setting up that fraction and that ratio, I think, is helpful for knowing what's going on in the model. But just know it's not literally the euros per dollar because that's the nominal exchange rate. So I wanted to make sure that's clear. With that out of the way, we're talking about the real exchange rate down here as our final outcome. And up here, if you remember, these are the real interest rates. Remember I said it in the review, we're going to have to be careful to know those differences. So this is a different thing down here than these two. These two are the same thing, and that's why I have one line across here, because this is just the number scale, and whatever, say this is a 4, then it's a 4 here too, also. And when this goes down, it will go down all the way across here, and then it'll have effects, which will ripple through to this model. That's why they're linked together in this particular order. Could go in any direction across these things as well. In fact, the first example I want to look at, I think, is the third example in the text. I'm not sure of the order, but I thought this one was the easiest to understand, actually, so I wanted to start with it. I'm referring to the model in the text about capital flight. The author uses Mexico and capital flight from Mexico, but I'll go ahead and use the U.S. It's okay. We'll be all right to use this as an example. We've been thinking about our sort of home field the whole time, so why would I stop now just because it's a different topic that we haven't really had a problem with in the United States. So if we have capital flight, which is defined as a large and sudden reduction in the demand for assets located in a country, of these models, the one that's most directly impacted first, if it's money leaving a country because people are nervous about the government's ability to pay its debts or instability there. That's why it hasn't really happened here. But, it's happened elsewhere, and we've been sticking with the U.S. all the time. We're talking about something starting up here. The reason we're talking about something starting up here is because the definition of net capital outflow is, again, just a reminder, it's their asset purchases here minus our asset purchases there, wherever there is, abroad. So it's that difference. And if things aren't stable here and people don't have faith in our assets here, people from other countries will want to decrease their purchases of our assets here. And we would want to increase our purchases of our assets there. Right? So net capital outflow would be increasing. It makes sense with the title. Outflow, people don't want to put their money in an unstable economic environment. So if net capital outflow increases, let's see what happens throughout our model. And by the way, another way to look at this is this event is not being caused by a change in the real interest rate. It's being caused by something outside of the model. That's why this line is shifting and not movement along the curve. Well, if that happens, people will increase. I have to do two parts here. I'll start over here. Remember, this demand curve came from investment and net capital outflow. If this increased over here, net capital outflow increased. Since this is coming from from investment and net capital outflow, this has to increase as well. proceed as if I could draw a straight line left-handed. And now I have a new equilibrium. And now at that new equilibrium, higher real interest rate, because that's what these are over here, is interest rates. Along my new net capital outflow over here, that will reflect down here with an increased supply of dollars in exchange markets, and that would put downward pressure on the real exchange rate. Down here. So when we have capital flight, that's money, assets, people's willingness to purchase assets leaving an economy. And so it's outflow, and the result is more of that currency being pushed onto exchange markets. And just to be clear, using our nominal rate here, if the bottom of a fraction increases, but the top is remaining the same, the quotient is a lesser number, and so we could expect to see lower exchange rates as a result of this net capital outflow. Or to sort of hopefully maybe put a ribbon on this whole idea, this is a depreciation of the currency. Well, think about what happened to begin with. People had less confidence in that governing body of that country. So shouldn't its currency depreciate? I mean, isn't that what we would kind of expect to happen, even without all this? So when we do all this and we get that kind of an outcome, it sort of checks the box, right? It sort of makes sense. That also kind of makes sense to me, the increase in the real interest rate. Remember back from our finance chapter, we talked about risk and the returns to risk. Well, if it's riskier to invest there, shouldn't the interest rates be higher as a risk premium? That also makes sense. So tying these things together, the outcome of this, it makes sense given the scenario. So that's how we do it. Of course, if people became more confident in this country, we could have decreased demand out there and had a decrease in net capital outflow. And this could have shifted left, and this could have shifted left, and we'd have all the exact opposite outcomes throughout. So that's the first scenario, tying the three models together. I'm, of course, going to stop the video because I need to clear my whiteboard. And that also gives you a chance to digest this.